You're watching The Experience, Comic Culture and Sales, streaming live daily to Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter.
Welcome. It's time for Minute to Skim It here on The Experience. I'm super happy because I get to hang out with my friend Kyle.
Hello.
As always, I am an LCS. Kyle previously was an LCS. And we have at our total interest, we want to have you love comic books as much as we do. Now, I want to point out, because some of you guys may not know Kyle as well as I do, he might be a little bit more picky.
Yeah, no, I'm Miss Jen is a sunshines and rainbows kind of person, and I am a dark clouds and gray skies and thunder and lightning kind of person. No, the truth of it is that I have, when it comes to comic books, I've been reading them my entire life.
Yeah.
And so I know what I like and what I don't like, and the way I like them and the way I don't like them. And sometimes those things are, it's hard for me to hide my displeasure.
Yes.
So I will always try and do my best to point out the good spots in these things. Even if, you just watched the last show where I pointed out the bad spots. I have whole different notes that are positive. So we'll see what we can do.
Yeah, because the point of this part of the show is to give you all information that you need to be able to make a decision, right? It's not really so that you guys get, that you care about what our opinions are necessarily. We're just trying to give you information.
Right. But Jay is sitting there right now going like this because he just heard me trash some of these books. He's sitting there going, uh-oh.
Oh, crazy. Okay, so I probably read twice as many as you.
Yeah, I did.
Would be interested. You're right.
We do 10 books a week for the in stores this week show. So I did 10 books.
I got 14 in, so I guess there's only a couple opted double outlines for me. So that's pretty good. 10 is good for you.
You want to start?
Yes, let's do this. I'll start with some of my very favorite things. I know it's just like when I eat, I usually save my very favorite for last, but I'm going to come out with a bang today.
Oh, I'm a dessert first kind of guy.
Are you? I'm a breakfast for every meal kind of girl.
I think that's just human. Go ahead.
All right. This is Fishflies from my, so obsessed with everything Jeff Lemire does. I did not read anything in advance of this to know what it was about at all. I just know that I'm totally bought in completely to anything he writes. I know that it's all over the place for topics and genre and all that kind of stuff. So this one is really cool. It's a almost prestige format, really thick book. It is the way you, like, if you've read any of his other stuff where he's done all of the watercolor art stuff, that's what you get here. It'll feel a little bit like, how would I describe it? It's a little bit like Four Kids Walk Into a Bank, because it's just kids kind of hanging out and double dog daring each other to do something. And a little bit sci-fi because of what happens further on. So the book starts with these kids that are discussing what they're going to buy at, you don't know at the beginning, it's going to be a convenience store, but you're thinking maybe it's an ice cream parlor or something they're walking to. And it probably sounds like every discussion that you have had with your friends when you're walking to the convenience store about who has money, who doesn't, what they're going to spend it on. And when they get there, like in our neck of the woods, we don't have fish flies. We have what we call love bugs, which is about the same kind of thing, when just like once every 5 years or so, they come out and breed in mass, and like they're all over your car and all over the road and your mouth and in your ears. So this one has them showing up at the convenience store, and in front of them, between them and the door, the whole entire parking lot is like just got them all over it. Just tons and tons and tons of them. And so they, of course, double dog dare one of them to walk across it, without his shoes on and go in and get the ice cream. And that is the last moment in which the book is very normal. There is just fair warning, there is damage to children, and it takes a big twist. And it feels a little bit like the Iron Giant because it, part of the story ends up being a young person making friends with something that is not human. So I loved it.
See, we call them mayflies here, and
Hello,
there are so many of them here. It shows up on Doppler radar as rain.
Oh, wow. So they have like the big long wings?
Yeah, great big wings, real skinny long body.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so that must be what these are.
Yep, that's what we have. So, if we're gonna, if you want to go again, or should I go?
Go ahead.
Okay, we'll start with the easiest book I had to read this week, the Grimm Fairy Tales 2023 Swimsuit Special. This book had 8 or so pages of story, and the rest were pinups.
Nice.
The 8 or so pages of story, I would say, they're important if you're following the current Grimm Fairy Tales story. But if you're picking this up because it's the 2023 swimsuit special, go ahead and skip those pages. They will mean nothing to you. And there's not fish people, but you need to know that fish people are a thing in the Grimm Fairy Tales universe, and it just isn't worth it. Because you can skip right ahead to the pinups, and there are some incredible pinups this year, as there are every year. Mm-hmm. If you go back and watch in stores this week, I called out a specific artist who I think particularly stands out. I will have you go back and watch that show because I can't remember his name in this moment. But the pinup story is really fun to check out, and it's a great way to see classic cover artists from Zenescope like Mike Crome, and then people you've not heard of that are up and coming future creators, and to kind of see who's coming in that ilk. So for me, this was the easiest book of the week to read, because it really isn't reading. It's, looking at it for the articles, right?
Art appreciation.
Looking at it for the articles.
What's so funny is that people like that don't read Grimm Fairy Tales or never partaken in a Zenescope, usually kind of like their opinion of them is like only guys like that book. But in my experience, all women read that book.
Right. Well, and that's the thing with Zenescope, right? Is it's the cover art it's why they package the worst food to you in the brightest colors. Right? This is what this is. That's what that cover is. The stories are always really good. Mm-hmm. But until recently, I will say this because we're going to be straight, and I'm going to be honest. Until recently, when they got really obsessed with fish people, so much Lovecraft, so many gills, it's just getting out of hand. It makes Jay's skin crawl. But the art is always the thing in these books, and this is just a great example of everything they have going for.
Mm-hmm. Awesome sauce. All right. What's next? I'm just going to go down the wall. I'm not even going to try to keep it in order. Okay. It was an interesting day today. I was just going to say, if you guys want to have like a heads up on what people are actually showing up for a day early, or in my market, we don't put out DC until tomorrow. So it was probably day of what people are already trying to go find. Hey, Nick! That I've had people come in today already and pre-buy Svengoolie and already pre-buy or try to pick up the Night Terrors one that releases this week. So that was kind of interesting.
I just got my cable provider just added Me TV so I can finally watch Svengoolie in real time, and I'm so excited to have a Svengoolie comic and I can watch Svengoolie, and it's great.
I love it. Hey, Kenneth, I just want to say hi. Okay, so this is Night Terrors. So if you want to catch up with the entirety of this part of the storyline that is still part of Dawn of DC, but the Night Terrors actually launched last week, and it had a starting book, which I can't remember what it's called, I think First Blood. And then it had tie-ins. So basically what you're going to see for DC is all of the main titles are not going to happen. They're going to be tied into Night Terrors. So everything's kind of like hiatusing while this is happening. So just so you know. You're going to have to probably get into this storyline or take a couple months off, I guess. Yeah, go ahead and ask questions. So for this storyline, I will tell you that it's Deadman centric. And what essentially is happening is it's kind of like Deadman, and then this character, I can't remember his name at all. But basically, this character is using Deadman's power to go into people's dreams and take them over, like completely take them over. It's not like I'm messing with your dreams. They just take over the character, which is pretty scary when you're thinking it's going through all of them. I think last week it went through Shazam, Batman. Shoot, I can't remember all the rest of them, but it was enough to be like, uh-oh. What do I rate Kyle's beard from 1 to 10? I give it a Riker 2. Riker 2. I always rate them in terms of Riker. Riker seasons.
I don't know that we can be friends anymore.
Did I get compared you to Riker?
Yeah, my beard's better than his.
I
don't have a whole team of Hollywood makeup people doing my beard.
That's true. It's ginger beard, so I have to give it extra points because I'm a ginger.
It's true.
Extra points. So anyway, this is my recommendation to you. If you have an inkling you ever wanted to try out something DC, especially the new stuff that they're intending to be a longevity through the DC titles, get this on your pull list at your LCS because it's going to get out of reach as this stuff sells out. You might not be able to go back and get the older ones, and it's definitely worth a read. Even if you don't know any of these characters, I'm not traditionally a DC reader, but there was plenty enough in this issue for me to buy into, like, this is super interesting. And I do like when people mess with each other's heads, and it's not about brawn, but it's about brain. Those are my favorite kind of stories.
All right, so I guess the next one for me will do. Let's get one out of the way here. Duck and Cover #1, and I'm going to start with this, and it's important, especially because we're talking about LCSs here. This is a digital first comic. So right now it's only coming out digitally. It will come out in print from Dark Horse eventually, but right now it's digital first. Do you remember having to climb under your desk and put your head between your knees because of a nuclear fallout drill?
No, I was just past that.
Right.
Yeah.
If that's you, then this book is unrelatable. It's an adversity story. It's a really simple concept adversity story. Guy wants to be a filmmaker, loses his eye, but the whole thing is set in the backdrop of a nuclear war or a potential nuclear threat. The premise of the book only works if ducking under your desk would have actually helped save you from a nuclear bomb.
Hey, it saved Indy from it when he got inside of a refrigerator, so I buy it.
Refrigerator different than wooden desk.
But I'm a kid.
I understand.
It would never hurt me.
This is only based on that concept. It doesn't really work. The high points for me are twofold with this. One, Scott Snyder is taking ideas to Comixology that wouldn't get published other places. So he's working out ideas that if they had come out from Scott Snyder at the height of Scott Snyderdom, with Severance and Batman and all of this kind of stuff, maybe would have sunk him. Because some of these Comixology concepts he has are just odd. And two, Raphael Albuquerque is just a man on fire. His work on this book is the single reason to look at this book. Um, it's a unique concept. It is what it is, but it doesn't really kind of pass through to getting you to care about the character or care about the world or care about the plot points. But man, is it pretty to look at. And I've read comics a lot longer for a lot worse reasons. So when you eventually see this one in your local comic shop, just know that it will have been out. It may have even been re-edited. We've seen that with some of these Comixology originals where they come out digital first. They hear the complaints and fix stuff. So by the time you see it hit shelves, pick it up, take a look, and see what you're in for at that point. As it sits right now, it's not great. But again, it's a book that's pretty to look at. So
Nice. Okay. I'm going to out myself as like, it's been so long since I've read Days of Future Past that I'm not 100% certain if this is all new content. This is Doomsday.
I think it is new content.
Okay, because it has so it has the classic, you know, the big Days of Future Past thing where it has like all of the like headshots of the characters on a big banner. They actually have that panel in this book, so that's why I was like, uh-oh, is this mostly old content with some new stuff thrown in? And I don't really think it does. This one kind of keys in on maybe the why those events happened. It definitely has things happen in terms of like the political aspects of what happened with the mutant control and people distrusting mutants, and then in general distrusting all superheroes altogether. And it's predicated, I think, at the beginning of them overturning, I can't remember which amendment is 21, whatever it was, like term limits, so that whoever the president is can be president forever. And that turns out to be bad. And then of course the Sentinels do what Sentinels always do. So in this explanation, they're wandering around everywhere. They're told that they're just there for protection, but really they're kind of like keeping account of where all the mutants might be for, you know, reasons to take care of them later on. So past telling you more about it's going to get you way far into the book. So I'm going to hang with you there. So if you like, most of X-Men's future look is pretty grim, but Days of Future Past is even more grim than usual. And so this one plays on that more. So if you like seeing your heroes in peril, then this is definitely your jam. It felt, there's a couple of books this week that felt like the way they were handling them for art style and story were definitely trying to touch back on the old style of the original. So that's good because the original storyline was amazing. So it's written by Guggenheim.
Yeah, the only thing that would have sold me on that one for sure would be if it was written by Claremont.
That would have been way too awesome, and we couldn't have handled it.
It's true. We'll do this one is Gargoyles Dark Ages #1 from Dynamite Comics.
Ooh.
Yeah. The Gargoyle series that Dynamite's been putting out has been good if you're a fan of Gargoyles, and you're able to kind of transport yourself to the person you were when you watched Gargoyles. Mm-hmm. It has its issues, in my opinion, in terms of voicing, but what this does is it's written by the same person. It's a different artist, and it's a precursor to the original show. So this is the Gargoyles you know from the original show as adolescents, as teenagers or children of some kind. And I think the concept could have been much more efficiently delivered if it had been almost like a Muppet Babies or one of those sort of more traditional animated kids shows feel.
Okay.
the other analogy I made is Little Rascals, right?
Yep.
You know, these gargoyles have their abilities and they know the thing, but they're still learning how to be gargoyles, kind of thing. So that would have been my take on this if I were going to do it. But the story they're telling has some of that universal appeal, but it's definitely not for kids. A precursor like this could have been a great way to introduce a new generation to gargoyles, but instead they just kind of tell a story of the gargoyles growing up and kind of the valley, the area where Manhattan, the Hudson Valley. I couldn't think of the word Hudson, and that's the main character in the book, is the older gargoyle at the time named Hudson. So he's like kind of like their Mr. Miyagi. And so it's an interesting take that I don't think is executed as well as it could have been. And at the same time, it doesn't make me care about these characters any more or any less than I already did. So you're not really adding anything to my experience here. And that to me is kind of a mistake when you have a licensed IP like this, is you need to add to the experience of the existing fans and try to grow new ones. So overall, it's decent, but it's not as good as it could be. If you're a big fan of the existing Gargoyles series from Dynamite, this is one to pick up because you're not going to want to miss any part of it. But it's I almost want to wait for this series to be done, read it, then watch the original show, then read the previous Gargoyle series from Dynamite, and kind of see if maybe that doesn't raise the level of this and that by consuming it in this way. So
Ship says it looks like AI. I can tell you it's not.
Right.
That's the one thing you need to know about Dynamite, is that Nick Berrucci supports tons of artists, and he's got good taste. So
this is definitely not AI. I'm trying to think. I knew who this cover was, but I don't remember anymore. But
I'm gonna see if I can see the little thing. It's like really tiny at the bottom, so I can't read it. Usually I can tell you. All right. What If Dark Loki? This one is the other book that I read this week that feels very much like they were trying for a look and feel of the older books. It's the Simonsons, so it makes sense that they know what they're doing with this stuff. So in this version, it has all the characters you really love from the first Thor movie, or second Thor movie, where it's got Satyr. So in this one, Loki has actually gotten control of the hammer. And it's like what the story looks like if he had that instead of Thor having it. And in just like spoiler alert, Thor isn't around past a part of this book. So, hey, Sean, what's up? So this one's great. It follows wonderfully in the world of all the what ifs. And I loved.
You want to do another one?
Oh, sure. Because now I can talk about Svengoolie. Svengoolie, the one that people have already been asking me about. Great. This is out of the awesome company Frank Miller Presents, and is in conjunction with the people that actually are part of the show. So it's not just like done in a vacuum. They actually were part of this. So this is a really awesome thick book. It goes like, if you don't know anything about Svengoolie, never seen this show, it's perfect. It introduces everything about who his character is, which is he tells really bad pun jokes during his show, and he has 3 kind of like sidekicks that appear with him. And in this book, he has them throwing like rubber chickens at him when he makes bad jokes, and for whatever reason, the rubber
That's
chickens
the thing on the show.
Okay, but they won't hit him. They like boomerang back, which is odd. And you can see that they have little remote control thingies on them. But you find out there's a bad guy. Back, no, that's not him. That's a robot version. There is a bad guy who decides he wants to try to overthrow the popularity of Svengoolie by going back in time and getting to his little, because he thinks the sidekicks are the key to all of his success. So they want to go back in time and kind of mess it up so that they don't become his sidekicks. And it's really cool because each of the sidekicks, when the character goes back in time to mess up their storyline, it's done in a different art style. It's really cool. And it plays through really well. You know, you worry when someone's like, I'm just going to try to write a story about a fellow who's on TV that makes fun, spooky jokes, and that couldn't have a possible storyline. This is really, really good. I was very happy about this one.
Yeah, I like the fact that it's Jill Thompson and Art Balthazar and Franco and Chris Jones, who are very cartoony.
Yeah.
Taking on Svengoolie, who is very cartoony. And the thing that I'm most excited about, because I love all four of those people, is getting this book and being like, hey, will you sign my book? And actually like being able to be a fan and not just that friend of theirs once again.
Yeah.
It's weird. I don't, Franco always bothers me going, hey, when are you going to do another jam piece like you used to do in Chicago all the time? And now I have a Svengoolie book to have them jam on.
Perfection.
All right. Let's go with, this is Savage Squad 6. Robert Venditti and Brockton McKinney. This book existed before from Dark Horse back in the early 2000s, and it wasn't successful.
Oh.
It had a different name, but it was the exact same story with the exact same font in the logo with almost an identical cover.
Same creative team?
No.
Oh.
It feels like they took this story that didn't work and gave it to Brockton McKinney and Robert Venditti and said, fix it. And they did the best they could. But the thing about this story is that you start off before you need to start off. Right? You're getting backstory for the lead character, but you don't really need the backstory to start the book. And then you get to about midway through the book and the story starts to move forward. Like you're like, oh, this should have been the beginning. And you have this team of kid soldier assassin types that all have they all have a very specific set of skills that make life miserable for people like you. Right? Like, one guy's the translator, one guy's the healer, one guy's the planner. It's like a D&D campaign or a group, but they spend a lot of time introducing you to characters that they kill 7 pages in, and then they replace them with new characters, and you don't have enough time with those characters to care. So it feels like almost like the first half of the book should have been a flashback that happens later in the story. And you should have spent more time in the second half of the book, which was really when the story started and really started to take off and have good movement. Mm-hmm. I get that you have to set up trauma, but it took too long. So that's kind of my, it's a decent premise, decent story in the second half. The first half, you slog through and slog through and slog through. Oh, and it's like, you remember that scene in Deadpool 2 where he introduces you to the whole team, and then before they all get off of the plane, they're all dead?
Mm-hmm.
It's that. And then the story starts. So, like I said, it's not bad conceptually. It just leaves something to be desired on the execution front. Not something I would continue reading after issue 1, having read it. But because it's Robert Venditti, and I've read Robert Venditti, and I know how much he likes to bury the lead and then mess with you later.
Mm-hmm.
I will continue reading just on that faith alone. So I'm prepared to have a good experience with this book, even though the first issue is not as good as I think it could be.
Okay. Okay. Oh man, this is going to be tough. I'm going to put some of this stuff together because it actually belongs together. And I'm going to skip to the ones that don't belong together because it's going to be real hard. Okay. This is a book that I was going to skip just because I looked at the cover and I was like, it's probably not my jam. But ended up being so very good. This one's called Death Comes for the Toymaker. It's a non-stop book out of Scout, which means the rest of the book will come in trade paperback form. So this is way cool for a premise. Okay, what you don't know is that that character happens to be named Nick. If you look at him carefully, you might be able to figure it out. Okay? This is actual death. They have, at some point in the past, made an agreement, a pact, in which for one day out of the year, Nick takes over Death's job and has to go do that in exchange for Nick having eternal life.
Oh man, I was really hoping they did a full-on job swap. And it's like 24 hours where all the dark toys that like your parents are kind of uncomfortable getting you that you have to ask Santa Claus for come from.
Mm-mm. No, I mean, he's like, Death literally sits in a chair and like eats nachos or whatever.
Okay.
He's totally chill. But in the telling of the story, when they go back and tell why the pact was made, how the pact was made, you get to see things like the scythe that he uses. There is an actual story behind that. The Santa character used to be somebody else in history who you might recognize when you see it. You'll be like, oh my gosh, it's so masterful in like, oh wow, this is not a story I've ever heard before. Like when you're thinking there's nothing new under the sun, this is something new under the sun. It is so stinking good. And I'll do one more Scout just because I don't want to think we're going to run out of time if I don't. Midnight Western Theater, The Witch Trial. So Midnight Western Theater usually is single shots, and this is very much the truth. This one's called The Born Again Girl. At the beginning of the story, a girl gets killed and brought back to life. And the rest of the story, that part of the story is super interesting, but the rest of the story definitely, and it's all kind of Western, right? Because that's the name of the book. The rest of the story is about her as she's grown up after she's been raised from the dead in very cool ways. That she is kind of like an acolyte to a witch, essentially, a Western witch. And that's just another like super unique storytelling. It's like I would have never put any of that stuff together, but it works really well.
All right. So my next book is Con and On.
I saw this one. I was like, oh, Kyle
from Ahoy Comics. This book is as inside baseball as a comic can come. It is super triggery if you've ever been a vendor at a convention, ever worked at a convention, ever been behind the scenes at a convention, ever gone to a convention, ever spelled the word convention, ever driven past a convention center. Like, it's inside baseball. Every part of this is that thing that you experience your first time going to a convention, or when you're a grizzled old veteran going to conventions, or when you're like me who goes to the convention and never actually goes to the convention and just hangs out at the restaurant nearby to the convention. Like it's it really does have something for everyone. It doesn't always execute well. One of the big things that I struggle with in this book is that it drops real names. So they'll straight up say Jack Kirby or Jim Starlin or actual names of actual creators. And then some of the other names are makeup names that are not actual creators. And you spend a lot of time going, what did that guy write? And then you find out he's fictitious. Like it does a really good job of kind of tying together the three kinds of people who are at conventions. Right? Or the four kinds of people who are at conventions, depending on your pathology.
Mhm.
But it doesn't do a good job of necessarily keeping you in the story. If you were going to make a movie or a television show about a weekend at Comic-Con, and you'd have an A plot, a B plot, and a C plot, this is how you would write it.
Mhm.
And it would be very interesting to watch. Because all the stories are interwoven because of their taking place at one place, but they're all separate.
Okay.
Until they're not. But then they are. But then, kind of that
Mhm.
when you keep running into the same people at a convention, right?
Sure.
You're on the floor of a convention, you keep crossing paths with the same people over and over. It's kind of that. So I would say this, if you don't want, and Dan said it best on our show earlier, if you don't want to know how the sausage is made, maybe don't read the book about how the sausage is made. But if you are one of those people who's like, I want to know how other people see conventions. Do other people see conventions like me? This is the book for you. And I will say this, Ahoy Comics is often hit or miss for me. For an Ahoy comic, I think this is great. Sometimes they take bold swings and miss completely. This is a bold swing that is a very solid hit. I don't know that I would want to read it only because I'm super triggered by it. But if I didn't have the convention-based trauma that I have, this would be my jam.
Okay.
This would be very good, but I have to go to therapy before I keep reading.
You have to go to therapy first? Oh, no. Okay. Mashbone Grifty is super stylized storytelling. It is super fun. Okay, so Mashbone Grifty. By the way, the book is done by Chispa, which is their Latino imprint. So just keep that in mind. It's supposed to be very, very Latino. So Mashbone Grifty are, we'll call them detectives. I don't know. They don't have an actual place of business. They hang out at the local, I think it's a pub, and just put their phone number up on little pieces of paper around town, I guess. And they find themselves at the center of a fun play on words detection that they've been tasked with. Guy comes in, essentially says that he's lost his COCK. And it's funny because everyone misunderstands what he's talking about, but they let you on purpose. So it's funny. I like the way they've done the stylized like language in it. There's a lot of, instead of man, it's mang. And it's just a lot of fun. It's a blast. Okay, and follow up to Close Your Ears if you haven't read Spider-Man, I guess, in a while. I don't know. So Miss Marvel's dead. So this is Fallen Legend, the death of Mrs. Marvel. So this is literally all of the superheroes gathering together at her mosque and honoring her with, like, if you've ever wondered what happens in that culture when someone passes, like, this will give you lots of insight. It, like, fully lets you experience the gravity of them dealing with the loss. And it's like all of the groups that she's been part of also come kind of almost independently. So you can see how, the champions honor her because they're younger, right? How the old guard of the Avengers honors her. So I know it seems like a throwaway book because everyone's like, well, it's not main storyline or main storytelling. There might be some stuff in here you might need to know going forward. So think about picking that up.
All right. I will do next. Panya, The Mummy's Curse, #1. This is a Mike Mignola, Chris Robertson book from the world of Hellboy, but I don't know how. The interesting thing about this book for me is I have very little knowledge of the Egyptian mythos.
Okay.
I know what I was taught by Neil Gaiman in American Gods. So basically that there's Bast, and that's it. And so the fact that this is set in that sort of Egyptian mythos is the most interesting part of this book for me. Because it's not something I know, so I don't have to suspend reality. I don't have to look anything up because I know Mike Mignola did it before he wrote the book. So I know that what it's saying is accurate to the mythos. So I can just learn that part of it. I see that from the banner from the world of Hellboy, and I expect it to tie in somehow to Hellboy, and I don't know how that's going to happen yet, which is both good and bad, right? If I knew how it was going to tie into Hellboy, I would be bored already. But because I'm not, I get to learn this thing and kind of wait to see the surprise ending or the surprise crossover, which will be super fun. It doesn't necessarily look like a Mike Mignola book like you would expect a Mike Mignola book to look. He's not drawing it, but even the artist doesn't seem to be totally that influenced by him. So it has sort of a weird feel for the Hellboy universe. But overall, it's a really good entry. And if you find Hellboy to be a little bit cumbersome to enter, because there's so much of it, some of these from the world of Hellboy offshoots like Panya and Koshe and some of those things are great places to jump in and just kind of get the feel. Do you like the kind of writing, kind of storytelling they do? And you're not going back and having to buy 60 volumes of Hellboy.
Right.
It's a good way. It's a good tester. It's a good litmus test to find out if you like Mike Mignola. And, you know, it's been established. We established it on my show last night. Mike Mignola, not for everybody. But if he's for you, you're going to love this book.
Very cool. All right, this one. All I have to say is hecka yeah. Moonknight, #25, is killer. Thank you, Jed MacKay, for continuing on. So I think MacKay goes all the way through issue 30. So he must be wanting to roll the last 5 issues into like fever pitch. This has got so much work in it. It's not lying when it says it's an enormous 25th issue. It is totally prestige format. It's almost like a mini graphic novel. And it is Moon Knight trying to hunt down a character that he has killed at least 2 versions of already, maybe 3. And it kind of like, I love how it continues to have the main character that's interacting with him through most of the book calls out specific aspects, like he knows Mark's in there, but he also talks about the other ones too. And he's like, oh, well, don't bring out so-and-so. I don't want to talk to them. But it's so good. And just know that when Jed rolls it up in issue 30, you should definitely be picking that up. You didn't hear that from me. Miles Morales Spider-Man #8. Miles is coming off of that whole storyline where it was him and I can't remember who the other big character was for that storyline. That's really bad. But anyway, this is essentially, the book starts out as slice of life for him. He's just hanging out with his friends and trying to go have a normal day with his girl too. And then Hobgoblin shows up and messes all that up for you. But yeah, it's I was thinking for a little while, is this connected to, because there's Hobgoblin action in other books this week? So It is not tied together. So there you go.
All right, I'm gonna do two back to back because one will be really quick, and then we can be back ahead of time. This is Rocketeer Den of Thieves by Stephen Mooney. Stephen Mooney does a really good job of capturing that voice from the Rocketeer era. You know, that Humphrey Bogart of it all.
Yeah.
Does a really good job of that. This is the Rocketeer fighting the Nazis. It's what the Rocketeer does in every book. In this book, he's a little more, I don't know, thoughtful. You know, he doesn't have the pack necessarily to start the book.
Oh.
And so he feels a little naked, and Stephen Mooney portrays that really well in the story. But at the end of the day, it's the Rocketeer versus the Nazis. Like it. If you're looking for more from the Rocketeer, you're looking in the wrong place. It's everything you love about the Rocketeer and nothing you dislike.
Perfect.
Next book is The Lonesome Hunters, The Wolf Child. I was informed during the previous show that this is the second volume of The Lonesome Hunters. I do not remember having read the first volume. I'm told I did. I don't remember. Doesn't matter. This book is still wildly interesting. The thing you need to know from the first volume is that there's this sword, right? And there's this guy whose job it is to protect the sword. Okay. This is more about that guy, but there's some other stuff happening. There's some people kind of hunting for the sword. There are people looking for the sword. And there's this little boy with a wolf mask on that lives in the woods that is frightening. Very scary, and will give me nightmares. This was a great little horror book. If you hadn't read the first volume, you don't need it. You just have to kind of accept that there's things you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And either they'll explain them to you later, or you'll have to go back and read the first volume. You don't know that yet. But very, very interesting, very fun book. Giant wolf. You know, so, and a magic sword. So we'll see where this goes with the magic sword. I'm going to reread volume 1 before the next issue comes out.
Perfect. Okay.
So I have 2 left, if that helps you plan how many you got to do right now.
Okay. Red Goblin is continuing to be awesome. You've been following the struggle that Normie has with, you know, he's been given this symbiote that is Rascal that he's trying desperately not to really use because Normie knows something about himself that everything is a little bit like he worries that he's too angry or too emotional, and Rascal will tell him it hurts him, it bothers him, he doesn't like to do it, that putting them together makes for a bad soup is essentially what is going on. And so yeah, he has to put Rascal on and become Red Goblin, and that, you know, it's going to continue to be bad. Web of Carnage is an awesome tale continuing on all of the Carnage mythos. Cletus is no longer a part of, but it throws in who I think that they were trying to say that's Morbius. I'm not sure. They never name him. Feels like he might be. And in this one, nope, it's the other book. Sorry, that is what this one's about. I've read too many Spidey related books this week, so I'm trying not to get them mixed up. All are great, but I have to
Been there.
Clear.
All right. Do I need to do another one now?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. So we're going to do Sirens of the City from Boom Studios, Sirens of the City #1. The thing about this book is that there is a segment of the population who will be turned off by this book at the outset. And there's a segment of the population who will love this book at the outset, regardless of what happens after that. And it really depends on how many times you've been kicked in the shins at a punk rock concert. This book, written by Joanne Starr and art by Kari Randolph, The art is incredible. Kari Randolph does a great job of doing gritty New York City. At this point, this is in the 90s, late 80s, 90s. The grunge and the grit that was New York at that time, without it getting washed out like sometimes happens when you have an artist doing grunge, right? Sometimes it just turns into a mess. That doesn't happen here, and instead it's really well apportioned how that looks, and it kind of really brings you into this vibe of this time. It's a story of this main character who you establish in the very first page is pregnant. And the story just gets more crazy from there. It is, I would say, if you took the X-Men and mixed it with like a coming of age story and set the whole thing to like the New York Dolls, that would be the vibe of this book. Or even a better reference would be the Dresden Dolls, right? This has got Amanda Palmer's voice all over it. So that kind of Art Nouveau hardcore punk from the 80s, 90s in New York sort of vibe. And then you find out that these people they're not X-Men, but they have the abilities of the X-Men.
Okay.
Kinda. I will tell you this, if you're into vampires, ghosties, werewolfies, sirens, any of the things that were in a Twilight film.
Mm-hmm.
Punk rock Twilight.
Hey, good synopsis.
I knew I'd get there.
Yep. All right. This is one of my favorite ones this week. I'm going to make sure that I'm not mixing up any of the storylines, that I'm not putting some of the pieces into the wrong place. Okay. Correct. All right. This one is awesome. Amazing Spider-Man 29. What is gone on beforehand is that Doc Ock kind of doesn't really have all of his abilities or memories or any of those things. They seem to be more linked to his the Doc arms. And J. Jonah Jameson's been running around with those on, because why not? And in this issue, he ends up with Spider-Man, and the Octo arms start reacting to Pete instead. So that kind of is awesome. And the whole time in the background, you've got Otto just losing his ever-loving mind. And I think of this issue also, they some characters break into what was once the Beyond Corporation's facilities, where for reasons unknown they've left all their tech. So that's never good. Remember, Beyond Corporation is the company that owned the rights to Spider-Man for a while and put Ben Reilly in various suits and sent him out into the city to do what they wanted him to do. So yeah, that storyline has continuing implications. They're awesome.
Awesome. All right. My last book is Hunger Dusk, or The Hunger and the Dusk. Dan labeled it Hunger Dusk, which I think is a better name. This book is not generally my jam. This is a high fantasy. You have goblins and people, and they're interacting. However, they've managed to bring in an antagonist in this book that is very interesting. And the goblins and the people have to come together. Or orcs and people. I don't remember. It's a high fantasy thing.
Yes.
It doesn't really matter. It's Romeo and Juliet. It's the Montagues and the Capulets versus space aliens or something. We don't know yet. But it has a Ross Rachel thing going. Will they, won't they? Between two people from the two different sects. And, it's got all of that stuff going for it that makes it a very interesting and fun book. It's G. Willow Wilson, so it's real. The narrative is really strong, and the it's woven together really well. Overall, great little book, super fun. But yeah, a lot of swords, man, a lot of swords.
Well, there you have it, everybody. I hope we've given you enough information about a ton of books this week. There are some of them. I have a feeling you should be at your LCS's front door when they open, or call them right now and make sure you have it pulled for their pull box, because I don't want there to be weeping and gnashing of teeth. They do the best they can trying to guess what you guys want if you don't tell them. So help them out, yo. Go give them a call. Thanks so much, Kyle, for popping on and being part of the crew. We'll see you guys next week for Minute to Skim It.